Good afternoon, everybody. I'm meteorologist Tim Pandages here with your Atlantic Tropical Update on Hurricane Fiona. That's going to be the main focus of our attention in this video. Today is September 19th, 2022. A quick overview of our seasonal scorecard here between the Atlantic Basin, Eastern Pacific. We added a new name to the Eastern Pacific. Madeline formed as a tropical storm in the last 24 hours. We're still on Fiona, that for the time being remains as a Category 1 hurricane. However, forecast to become a major hurricane as it moves to the north and eventually gets much closer to Bermuda by later on this week. Elsewhere in the basin, we've got two other tropical waves to watch. One is a 30% risk moving into the North Atlantic, not a bother to anybody. But another wave here has a 20% risk that right now is getting interaction with the outflow from Fiona, imparting some wind shear on it. But once it moves a little farther to the west, it may be one to watch in the longer range. So let's talk currents. Here's a look at current satellite imagery on Hurricane Fiona. This is the infrared satellite imagery, and we've used this plenty of times before. This helps us decipher the temperatures of the cloud tops and why that's important. The colder the cloud tops means the stronger the convective activity is, meaning they stretch higher up into the sky, have a higher altitude, and are stronger in nature. Here's the center of Fiona, and notice the convection, the strong thunderstorm activity all around that center there, indicated by the white and black cloud tops. Those are extremely cold cloud tops. Now, Fiona made two landfalls, one over the western parts of Puerto Rico yesterday, and overnight, and the majority of the overnight is spent over the Dominican Republic. Now, being over land, you would think it would really weaken it and drop its intensity. Yeah, it weakened it slightly. We only had about a 5 millibar increase in its overall central pressure as it moved over land. Now it's beginning to move back over the northern shore of the Dominican Republic and enter back out into open, very warm waters, re-emerging into its energy source. So we're already seeing some evidence of this intensification process that's underway. In the last couple of frames here, notice the center there is starting to warm and clear on out, meaning an eye is forming and intensification is underway. It's moving to the northwest at 90-mile-per-hour winds, so that puts it at a higher grade Category 1 storm. When we look at the Saffir-Simpson scale, expected to become a Category 2 hurricane later today, and then eventually a Category 3 major hurricane by later on this week. Now, despite the storm itself moving away from Puerto Rico, we've got a deep fetch of tropical moisture coming in out of the southern Caribbean that's still bringing flooding rains to Puerto Rico. Already have seen 1.5 feet, 2 feet, 2.5 feet of rain, and more tropical downpours are building in from the south, lifting to the north. So additionally, we're looking at another 1 to 3 inches on top of what you've already seen before this all pulls away off to the north. Right now, ongoing flash flood warnings through a large portion of Puerto Rico. This will continue until the rain finally stops, and that likely won't happen until later tonight and even into tomorrow. So here's a look at visible satellite imagery of Hurricane Fiona. Has all the features of a textbook intensifying hurricane. We've got the outflow cirrus aloft spanning off to the north, northeast, and we've got inflow coming in from the south. And even in the last couple images there, you can start to see an eye beginning to clear on out just to the north of the northern shore of the Dominican Republic there. It's moving over open, warm waters for the foreseeable future, so ongoing intensification is expected. Now, dry air has really been a culprit to stopping storms from intensifying much so far this season. Here's water vapor imagery, and this shows us where the dry air is in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. It's indicated by the yellow shading that's mostly off to the west of the center of Fiona at this time. It has done a great job thus far in its lifespan to wall off itself from any of that dry air getting entrained into the system and essentially choking it off and having it stutter along and not intensify very much. It looks likely to remain doing that as it heads to the north towards the Turks and Caicos Islands. That's next up for some impacts, and likely before it gets there, it will do some more intensifying. As look at the warm water share. You need 80-degree water temperatures or warmer. And you certainly have that in the mid-80s here and on its forecast track, just getting warmer and deeper warmer waters going forward. So we talked about additional rain. Here's what the models see as we go right through the next few days. So on top of what you've already seen in portions of Dominican Republic, another ½ foot in places like La Romana. Over in Puerto Rico, an additional 1, 2, 3, maybe locally 4 inches on top of the 2 feet. Catastrophic flooding is ongoing there as well as in Dominican Republic as Fiona slowly pulls away. Again, it's only moving at 9 miles per hour. That's not a very fast pace for a tropical system. So here's its current location, now back over open water with winds sustained of 90 miles per hour, gusts well over 100, pulling away from Hispaniola, bearing down on the Turks and Caicos. But notice the track here. The storm itself will pass just to the east of the Turks and Caicos, so it'll be on the cleaner side of the storm. Still under a hurricane warning here, still likely to see very strong winds and some heavy rain, but the worst of the storm is always on the eastern side, the dirty side, and that's where you'll find the strongest of the winds, the highest storm surge, and also the heaviest of the rain. So in a way, this is a decent track for the Turks and Caicos, but impacts are still expected there and still likely to be severe as the storm pushes off to the north. Then it's over open, warm waters for a couple of days. Here we are Friday morning, and the storm is located just to the northwest of Bermuda right there. Notice its intensity at this time. A Category 3 major hurricane. Hurricane Center says 120 mile per hour sustained winds. Bermuda on the eastern side of the track, the dirty side. So we're getting the brunt of the storm surge, the brunt of the strongest winds and heaviest rain moving through that area. The only good thing about this is as it's moving to the northeast, it's picking up forward speed. So notice the amount of distance it covers in a relatively short amount of time. So the impacts here will likely be pretty dangerous and pretty critical, but it'll be moving out fast and it won't be lingering like we're seeing over Hispaniola and Puerto Rico. Here are the current tropical alerts. What you're seeing in that purple and pink shading are hurricane warnings. Those are areas that are likely going to see hurricane impacts in the next 36 hours. We've already seen that in the Dominican Republic. Back down to tropical storm warnings over Puerto Rico. Hurricane warnings for Turks and Caicos, and tropical storm warnings as you get a little bit farther into the eastern portions of the Bahamas and the Nanagua Islands here under a tropical storm warning as well for imminent impacts from Fiona. So let's look at the wind field now. Now this is computer data showing what category strength winds these areas will likely see. So we've got Category 1 wind speeds here. So 74 to 95 mile per hour sustained winds in the area in yellow. Again, notice the strongest of the winds located to the east, northeast of Fiona Center. Here we are tomorrow morning. Here's the Turks and Caicos likely getting in tropical storm winds, maybe even close to Category 1 hurricane winds in the far eastern portions of the islands there. Then we're up over the open waters. We strengthen and intensify, and by the time we make it to Bermuda by Friday morning, look at the swath of Category 3 major hurricane winds likely right over the Bermuda area. That's winds of 111 to 129 miles per hour in this area here. On top of that, you've got the storm surge. Now, I will say Bermuda is built for this. A lot of their infrastructure is built to withstand hurricanes. They are in Hurricane Alley, so they should fare a little bit better here, but nonetheless, a major hurricane impacting the area is kind of an oddity and very rare. They get impacted by hurricanes all the time, but majors are a little bit more rare. All right, here's a look at the forecast track from the computer models. Much better consensus now, higher confidence on that track off to the north, kind of zigzagging its way through the Atlantic and moving most likely just to the north and west of Puerto Rico, putting them on that dirty side. Here's the GFS ensemble, all 30 members pretty much on track, as well as the European, a few outlying members, but majority consensus here to the north towards Bermuda by later on this week. All right, let's compare the two now. We've got the GFS and the European. The GFS is going to be in the yellow. The red will be in the European model. So both pretty much on target. Timing differences slightly as it moves north of the Turks and Caicos. GFS is a little bit faster. Euro lags it behind. But regardless, look at the general direction. They both go very similar tracks. There's Bermuda, both tracking a very strong Fiona to the west, northwest of Bermuda on the dirty side. I talked about Bermuda experiencing storms is not really all that rare, but stronger storms are a little bit more rare. The last major hurricane to make landfall, not just impact, but to make landfall on the island, it's hard to do, it's like threading a needle, was back in 1926 with major hurricane was Cat 310. And the last time an actual hurricane, Category 1 or 2, made landfall on Bermuda was Paulette back in 2020. In fact, there was a year, 2014, where 2 hurricanes made landfall in the same season. That was Faye and Gonzalo back in 2014. And here's a look at all the hurricanes that have passed within 50 miles of Bermuda during this time. So you're not strangers to dealing with hurricanes in Bermuda. Let's jump over to that other tropical wave. 20% chance of developing here now well to the east of the Leeward and Windward Islands. But look what's going on here. It's getting impacted by Fiona. The outflow that is a critical part of its ventilation process to intensify is spilling out upper level winds that are diving off to the south and southeast, imparting some strong wind shear on this wave. So until that wave can move farther to the west, it'll stay weak. Once it gets closer to the Windward Leeward Islands and into the Caribbean eventually, that's when it may be one to watch as we get into late this week and early next week. But that's down the road. For now, let's focus on Fiona. All right, until next time, you can find me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. Also on TikTok at TimTalkWeather. Please enjoy the rest of your Monday and stay safe if you're in those areas, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and the Turks and Caicos. Another update coming your way later today and again tomorrow.